Victorian morality created one of the most complicated relationships with nude art in Western history. It was an era that publicly celebrated virtue, restraint, modesty, and strict social codes, yet privately remained deeply fascinated by the human body and classical beauty. This tension shaped everything from painting and sculpture to museum culture and even what could be shown in public. In 19th-century Britain, influenced by Queen Victoria's reign, society placed strong emphasis on moral behavior and sexual restraint. The body, especially the nude body, became something that needed justification. It was no longer enough for art to simply show beauty. It had to explain it, disguise it, or elevate it through mythology, history, or allegory. This is why so much Victorian-era nude art hides behind classical stories. A naked figure could be accepted if it was labeled as a goddess, a biblical character, or an ancient mythological subject. Without that narrative protection, the same image could be considered inappropriate or even scandalous. Meaning became a kind of moral shield. At the same time, academic institutions and royal academies promoted highly controlled standards of artistic nudity. Artists were trained through life drawing classes, where studying the nude body was considered essential for mastering anatomy. Yet these studies were often kept separate from public viewing. What was acceptable in the studio was not always acceptable in society. This contradiction created a split reality. The nude body was both essential to art education and heavily restricted in public life. Artists such as John Everett Millais and others associated with the pre-Raphaelite movement navigated this tension carefully. Their works often embraced historical, literary, or mythological themes, allowing them to explore beauty and the human form while still remaining within moral boundaries. Meanwhile, classical sculpture displayed in museums was often corrected for Victorian audiences. Many ancient statues were fitted with coverings like fig leaves or discreet drapery. These additions were not part of the original artworks. They were moral adjustments made centuries later to align ancient beauty with modern standards of modesty. This act alone reveals how strongly Victorian values reshaped even historical interpretation. Yet despite these restrictions, nude art never disappeared. It simply adapted. It became more symbolic, more coded, and more carefully framed. The body was still present, but it was often softened through light, myth, and composition. Even sensuality was filtered through aesthetic distance. At the same time, Victorian culture also developed a quiet obsession with what it tried to suppress. Private collections, hidden prints, and underground circulation of erotic imagery existed alongside official academic art. This duality, public restraint and private curiosity, defined much of the era's visual culture. As photography emerged, this tension became even more complex. The camera made the body easier to capture, reproduce, and distribute, forcing new debates about morality, censorship, and artistic freedom. What counted as art became even more difficult to define. In many ways, Victorian morality did not eliminate nude art. It reshaped it into something more controlled, more coded, and more intellectually justified. But beneath that control, the same human fascination remained unchanged. Because no matter how strict the rules became, the human body continued to appear in art, sometimes hidden, sometimes disguised, but never fully removed. And that is the paradox of the Victorian era, a society determined to discipline the gaze, yet unable to stop it from looking.